evangelical world in this country has had a mentality of accommodation for a long, long time. And it's growing. This accommodation has gotten greater down through the years. And if we believe that Christianity is truth, and there's only one reason to believe that, to be a Christian, and that is because we know it is truth, the truth of all reality, then if it is truth, it carries with it the fact that there is none truth which stands in antithesis to it. And you can visualize liberal theology as a very clear thing. You can visualize the whole thing that's taught in the public school system, that the final reality is only energy which has its present form by chance. So this stands in total antithesis to truth. Therefore, for Christians, we must realize that the very statement that we believe Christianity is true brings with it confrontation. But the unhappy thing is that in the evangelical world and under the evangelical leadership and the evangelical establishment in general has had a mentality of accommodation for many, many years rather than confrontation, until I often wonder who believes what as far as truth is concerned. And as the world spirit develops around us, there's only two real attitudes we can have toward it. Either we bend the scriptures to fit the world spirit, the changing, fallen world spirit that develops about us, or we judge the changing, falling world spirit that exists about us by the Bible. There's no middle ground. And what I observe in much of the evangelical world is that issue after issue as it arises simply there's been an accommodation rather than a confrontation. One can think of Scripture as the most central issue, as I would certainly see it. And that is the fact that many theological seminaries in this country, many of the very colleges where we've just had our seminars, there are professors and sometimes entire theological seminaries that have merely absorbed the neo-orthodox view of the Bible and using evangelical terms are now teaching it under the terms of evangelical. This is entirely destructive. When the question of human life came along, it was not unhappily the evangelical leadership nor the evangelical establishment that provided any leadership in fighting for the diminution of the value of human life. It was nothing but a huge silence. Nothing but a huge silence. You have Christian magazines that are always very careful to present both sides of the question and provide no leadership at all for what is right and what is wrong in these issues as they arise. As extreme feminism came forward, large sections of evangelicalism simply fit into the extreme feminism. As a matter of fact, I know theologians who had a good view of the Bible, and then they accepted an extreme feminism, and because of accepting an extreme feminism, they saw that it didn't conform to the Bible, and therefore they changed their view of the Bible. I actually know of these cases. When the whole question of defense came along, there was a huge acceptance of a really non-biblical view of forgetting what God had given human government for, to really protect justice in the world. So what you have is and I've watched it for 50 years now, what you have had is a continued development of accommodation at every point. And I believe that evangelicalism stands at the moment where either there will be a shift in this, and we will see come forth a young group of Christian radicals, and older ones as well, who will be willing to make a loving confrontation. It must be loving, but nevertheless a courageous confrontation in the evangelical world, or the whole thing's going to be lost. Now, when the liberals took over most of the large denominations in this country in the 20s and the 30s, it removed a barrier from the whole culture sliding down the road that it has slid down since that. It's just removed a barrier. And I believe very, very profoundly, after all my observation and study, that the final barrier in this country against the total takeover of a humanist society and a loss of liberty to the real Bible-believing Christians at many points, the last barrier to that is the evangelical world. And if the evangelical world is weakened, I think the last barrier will be gone. For the sake of truth, therefore, loyalty to Christ and the Bible, and in order that we might be a voice in the midst of this awful slide in our culture, which we've been talking about in these days, for all these points, but most of all out of loyalty to Christ himself and to truth, I believe it is a moment where we must be willing to draw lines and say, this and this does not take a clear position. We love you, but we must stand against you in these things. Now, at this particular moment, I think this is the issue and the primary issue that we must face in this country. It's a very sober moment, but I think we are here whether we want it or not. And that the worst thing we can do is to pretend that evangelicalism is an unbroken fabric. It is not. It is torn. It is completely ruptured, has been increasingly so for many, many years. And it's a time for lines to be drawn. And if you've noticed my new book yet, the last paragraph of that book ends like this. And that is, I think I can remember it word for word, I may miss it. If there is not loving confrontation, but courageous confrontation, if we do not draw lines, even when we wish we did not have to, history will look back to this moment and see it as a time when, quote unquote, evangelical colleges will have gone the way of Harvard and Yale. When, quote unquote, evangelical seminaries will have gone the way of Union Theological Seminary in New York. And when, quote unquote, other evangelical organizations will be lost to the cause of Jesus Christ forever. I believe this is the moment of history. And I hope that those of you who have come here will not just scatter and go back, having learned a few new facts, had a few more doors open to you, without realizing that this is a crucial moment of history. And it is our hope that there will be a group of young Christian radicals and older ones who will be willing to pay the price for stepping into loving confrontation, but real confrontation in the evangelical world, back through the churches, back through the organizations, back through the schools.